What are the best microphones or recording devices for content creators? Should you get a condenser microphone, a dynamic microphone?
What about lav microphones? Or maybe wireless microphones like this?
What about on-camera shotgun microphones? Oh, and don't forget about XLR shotgun mics as well. What's the best polar pattern and what is a polar pattern?
And then we have the big mama question, how much money do I actually need to spend to get good enough audio for my videos?
There's really no way to sugarcoat it. Audio and recording equipment can be overwhelming, especially when you're someone who might just be entering into the world of content creation. But have no fear, because in this video, I want to take all of the complex, confusing topics and lay them out in the easiest to understand fashion possible. My goal with this video is to not just blindly recommend you on one single microphone. Instead, I want you to understand the different factors that dictate the quality of a microphone and the specific uses of the different styles. Once you understand that, you will easily be able to pick up the best microphone for you in the content you're creating. Now, throughout the video, I will recommend some specific microphones, and all of the links to the gear that I talk about will be in the description below. The reason understanding the why before the what is so important is because I've seen so many people, including myself, buy the wrong microphone for the type of content that they plan on shooting. They bought a good microphone, it's just not a good microphone for them. And they learned this the hard way, having to go out and buy another mic down the road after realizing their initial mistake. So with all that intro out of the way, let's dive right into it. Up first, let's look at a quick overview of two technical aspects of microphones that everyone should be aware of. The first is the actual mechanism used to convert physical sound waves to an electrical signal. We have two big players here: dynamic and condenser microphones. Dynamic microphones have a large magnetic coil inside that literally moves back and forth as it gets disrupted by sound waves, and this movement is then converted into the digital signal that we can listen to and record on our device. Because this component is relatively large and can move quite a bit, dynamic microphones are known to be very rugged and durable, as well as being capable of getting hit with both quieter and super loud noises without getting damaged. This makes them a popular choice for recording things like drum sets, since that noise is so harsh and powerful. Condenser microphones, on the other hand, have a very thin conductive metal plate that again gets hit by these sound waves, and then that movement gets converted into the electrical signal. Because this movement is small relative to the larger movement of the coil in dynamic microphones, condenser microphones typically need additional phantom power to amplify the signal and also power some of the electrical components within the mic itself. Now, if you've never heard that before, phantom power is a technical term for the fact that an external power source is required for the microphone to function properly. The microphone that I'm using right now that's in my hand is the Rode NT-G3. It's my main microphone for filming pretty much all of my YouTube setups, and it's a condenser microphone, and as you can see, as I take a step back here, it's plugged into this XLR cable, which then goes into my Zoom H4n, which is actually the thing that's saving and storing this audio. Normally I plug the Zoom H4n into my actual camera, but for the sake of this, I just wanted to show everybody what it actually looks like. Because there are electronics in here and we need that phantom power, plugging it into this is what supplies the mic enough power to actually function. Some condenser mics actually do solve this problem by including a battery in the mic, but that's usually with more affordable models. On top of that, because we have such a small element in these condenser microphones, they tend to be much more sensitive, picking up a wider range of frequencies, especially when it comes to those crispy, higher frequencies. They can, however, get damaged by super loud noises due to that somewhat more fragile inner metal plate. This is all very technical, and I've simplified it quite a bit, but for the most part, you can generalize the two categories like this. Dynamic mics are solid all-around workhorses. Because they're not as sensitive, they tend to block out way more background noise. They're popular for recording loud sounds like live music as well as podcasts where people are very close to the actual mic itself, and they have that rich, smooth, bassier sound that you're used to hearing in podcasts and many radio stations. Condenser mics, on the other hand, are a bit more fragile and much more sensitive to both sounds and a larger array of frequencies. This means we collect more background noise, but it also gives us a better representation of the full frequency range of voices, sounds, and everything else. Honestly, you can search for hours comparing these two types of microphones and you'll feel like you're making little to no progress, and it's because neither is better than the other. When it specifically comes to filmmaking though, it does seem like the majority of microphones out there are condenser mics. I know that's primarily what I use simply because I value that very natural frequency range that condenser mics pick up on compared to the slightly bassier sound that you can get with dynamic microphones. On the flip side though, there's still a ton of value in dynamic mics, especially for podcasts or filming in rooms that are untreated, repeated, because if you can get yourself that close to the mic, you're gonna block out all of that background noise and you get that very nice, smooth bass sound. Now moving on, the next topic we need to cover, I think has a larger impact on the decision-making process, and that is the polar pattern of our microphones. You can think of this kind of like the directionality of our microphones. Do they pick up sound in all directions, or are they more tightly focused on just one particular direction? There are tons of different polar patterns, but I think there are 6 major ones and we can cover them very quick. Up first, we have omnidirectional microphones, and like the name suggests, it can pick up sound in all directions. This is an omnidirectional lav mic, and you can see that really no matter which direction I point it in, the sound is gonna stay relatively consistent. Up after this, we have cardioid microphones, which are significantly more directional in nature. They reject much more sound from the back and sides of the microphone, which is clear to see when you look at a graphic comparing the 2 types we've mentioned so far. This is a common pickup pattern you'll see with mics that a comedian might have up on stage as they give their show. Podcasters also use these, and a lot of basic USB mics that you can plug into your computer have this pattern as well. Now up next, we have super cardioid microphones, which is exactly what my Rode NTG3 is. With microphones like this, we're gonna get an even more exaggerated cardioid pattern. So we have more rejection from the side, but one thing is we also do get a little sensitivity from behind the mic, and I'll show you that right now. So as I rotate it to the side, this is gonna be the maximum rejection area, and then from the back, you can kind of start to hear my voice again. Granted, it's not all that much. All right, one step beyond this is hypercardioid. It probably doesn't need too much explaining at this point. Again, it's an even more exaggerated pickup pattern compared to the previously shown supercardioid mic. More side rejection, but slightly more pickup behind the mic as well. I will say though, if you're thinking to yourself, these don't really seem that different, you're not wrong. To an untrained ear, it would be very hard to notice a significant difference. Now we have 2 more here. We have bidirectional, which isn't too common. They have 2 prominent directions for recording audio with rejection in between those 2 areas. And then finally, we have the shotgun polar pattern. Now, I personally find this a little confusing, especially since the term shotgun is used all the time to describe microphones that are also labeled with other polar patterns. For example, my Rode NTG3 is a shotgun microphone, but it's also labeled as a supercardioid, which is kind of why it's confusing. But I think an easy way to explain this is that the cardioid or super or hyper, whatever style it is, that pattern is determined by the microphone capsule. Now that capsule can be placed in a longer tube. Now due to the placement of that capsule within the tube, we get the shotgun classification, which due to the longer length and the placement of these slots on the side make it even more targeted and directional towards the front. We also increase the side rejection by a ton, and we also limit the backward sensitivity as well. Okay, now that does it for most of the technical jargon. Let's now dive into some tangible examples of common microphones that you'll see while you're shopping on the internet and talk through specific content scenarios that each one is designed for. Up first, we have our built-in onboard camera microphone. The only purpose in bringing this up is to outline how you really should never use these, at least 95% of the time. Onboard camera mics, which is exactly what you're listening to right now, are notorious for being kind of just overall not that great. They have bad preamps, which is gonna add some background hiss and some buzz that isn't gonna sound good. They're also not that directional, meaning that they're gonna capture audio from the sides, the front, some from behind, which means you're gonna get a lot of background noise. And then we also have this issue of proximity where if I'm close to the camera like I am now, it's gonna sound okay, but as I start moving back, we're gonna get this compounding effect of all the echo coming in. And if I were to open up this window and all of a sudden wind and like bird noises started coming in, it's just gonna muddy up the audio like crazy. Now up next, we find ourselves with the on-camera shotgun microphone, like the ones you'll commonly see sold by Rode, with their most popular option being the Rode VideoMic Go. These are an upgrade because they automatically beat the build quality of our onboard camera mics. They have better preamps, and preamps, by the way, are just basically like a built-in amplifier that helps take the weak signal produced by the mic and increase it to a more audible level. A bad preamp adds additional hiss and static buzz to the audio, where a good preamp more cleanly increases that signal strength, which sounds much better to our ears. And now on top of having better preamps, they're also much more directional because they have that longer tube body shape. So this means it's gonna be more focused on my voice. It's gonna reject some of the echo and reverb from the room. The only issue though is that we're gonna suffer from that same distance problem. Because the microphone is still mounted onto the camera, it's stuck with the camera, and if I start moving back, we're gonna run into that same issue as before, where we do start catching into some of that echo, and we're also just not gonna have the same strength of the sound waves actually coming to hit the camera. So for the most part, I think that these are a great starter mic for people who might be vlogging and like literally holding the camera right next to their face, or for people filming action stuff because they're gonna be right there and they just need to pick up better sound wherever the camera is actually pointing, or people filming travel videos who need that waterfall, maybe the sounds of the birds chirping and they can't, get that sound any other way. And then finally, maybe people who are doing stuff like cooking, where again, repeating this trend, the camera is gonna be right up close to the actual food and we'll be able to get those sounds relatively easy. If you are gonna be moving your camera away from the subject that you're filming, you're gonna wanna look into another option though. Instead, I regularly use our next category, which are lav mics. And this is also what I typically recommend to people when they're just getting started. Lav mics are great because you solve the issue of distance by literally clipping the mic to the person who is speaking, ensuring the highest quality audio. And distance, by the way, if you haven't noticed, it's one of the biggest factors that impacts audio quality. I like to say the sweet spot is having your mic anywhere from 6 to 18 inches away from the audio source, which is usually a person's mouth. Another thing I love about lav mics is the quality to price ratio. In other words, you're able to get relatively great quality audio from mics that are dirt cheap. The Pop Voice Pro microphone, which is what we're listening to right now, is something that I always recommend, especially to people just getting started. You can literally get this on Amazon for less than $15. It has a very long cord. It's literally plugged into my camera right now, so it also makes it pretty versatile. And I think the sound quality, sure, it's not going to compare to the NTG3 or some maybe more expensive lav mics, but this is one of the rare opportunities in the filmmaking gear world where something super cheap is actually still usable. So make sure you jump on that opportunity. Now, one thing I really love about lav mics is, yes, we can plug them directly into the camera and get great audio, but as we move further away, like further than the actual cord of our lav mic can go, we can plug it directly into a dedicated recorder like this Zoom H1N, and now I can go as far back as we want. I can be over here and the audio is gonna sound crystal clear. There's a little baby seagull over there, wow. I can also be way back here and the audio is still gonna sound great. Now, if you haven't noticed, we are outside on a very windy day and there's literally an airport like a couple hundred feet behind me. Planes are landing left and right. If we compare and contrast the lav mic between the onboard camera, the difference is, you can't even use that. It's literally because of this versatility and relative affordability that I recommend lav mics with dedicated recorders to almost anyone that asks me what they should get when they're just getting started. Another benefit of having a field recorder like the Zoom H1N is that it has its own built-in high-quality microphones as well, which you can use to record sound effects while you're out in the field. For example, I use these all the time in travel content to capture ambient sound effects that I know I'm going to want to use later. Now, one really important thing that we do need to highlight here is that most DSLR and mirrorless cameras, and even smartphones, have 3.5mm headphone/microphone jacks, which we can plug these lav mics directly into. The issue though is that there are two different types of mic plugs. We have TRS, which stands for tip ring sleeve, and then we have TRRS, which stands for tip ring sleeve. Most professional equipment like DSLR cameras, mirrorless cameras, and dedicated recorders like the Zoom H1N work with the TRS plug, while smartphones and computers tend to use the TRRS plug. It's confusing and kind of annoying, I know, but the good news is that there are really affordable adapters out there that convert TRS to TRRS and vice versa. Now up next, but still kind of connected to lav mics, we have wireless recording setups. These are great because again, we solve that distance from camera problem, but with these, we also don't have to synchronize the audio in post since it's literally being transmitted from the transmitter to the receiver, which is plugged into our camera. This convenience is awesome. We do run the risk of having that connection fail for some reason, usually because of distance or an interfering object like a wall or a group of people. But nowadays, wireless microphone kits typically record backups directly to the transmitter itself, which protects you in the instances that you lose connection. The kit that I personally use is the Rode Wireless Go 2, which I really do love. It comes with two transmitters, allowing me to record two subjects simultaneously. These transmitters themselves have microphones built in, so you can clip those right to your shirt. But more commonly, what I do is plug a handy lav mic into the mic jack on the transmitter, which is TRS by the way, and then I clip that either onto my shirt or my subject's shirt, and then I place the transmitter in their pocket, I clip it to their belt, whatever it is, I just hide it so it's out of sight, and that connects automatically to the receiver, which is plugged into my camera, and the audio is cooked right into the video file. Now, DJI actually just released their own wireless microphone kit, which is basically the same exact thing as the Rode kit, except the fact that the transmission distance is slightly longer, and I have not heard anyone complain about a tendency to have the mics actually peak. So I'm not gonna upgrade because I don't have that big of an issue with my current mic kit. If you're just getting something for the first time, the difference in price isn't all that much, so I would just go with the DJI kit. Okay, up next we have what I like to call advanced shotgun or boom microphones. These are for people getting very serious with their productions and have the budget to spend over $500 or so on their audio equipment. And granted, you can get some for cheaper than that, but is it worth it at that point? That's a you question. These are microphones that you'd commonly see on film sets, in higher budget interviews or commercial work, and YouTubers who take the value of their production very seriously. These tend to be highly directional, longer tube-shaped mics. Compared to the on-camera shotgun microphones we mentioned earlier, which tend to have built-in batteries and 3.5mm plugs, these more advanced shotgun microphones usually require phantom power and work with XLR cables. This is slightly less convenient and requires more gear than just a traditional device with a 3.5mm microphone jack, but the trade-off is significantly improved audio quality. Now, as chaotic as all that gear might sound, it's still a relatively versatile setup. I can rig it all to my camera just like I have now. I can throw the NTG in a mic stand and film commercial interviews. We can attach it to a boom pole and have a crew member hold that over speaking subjects in scenes where the audio source is moving or coming from multiple subjects, and I can literally plug it directly into the H4n and use it as a handheld recorder, saving the audio directly onto the H4n. And then finally here, rounding out this section on microphone types, we have the podcast mics, which are also called desktop microphones, given the fact that they're typically visible on a person's desktop in the video that they're recording. When it comes to these mics, we really have two differentiating factors that we want to consider. The first factor goes back to the beginning of this video, dynamic versus condenser. Unlike most of the other microphones that we've talked about so far in the video, which have primarily been condenser microphones, podcast and desktop mics are kind of split 50-50 between dynamic and condenser, and it's going to come down to personal preference. Again, dynamic mics are super rugged, can record a wide variety of sound types, and have excellent background noise rejection, which makes them a popular option for podcasters and other long-form content creators where we don't want to irritate our viewers with any annoying background noise. Condenser mics, on the other hand, again, are much more sensitive, which allows them to pick up on a wider range of frequencies, and they sound a bit more true to life, but due to the sensitivity, they also pick up on a little bit more background noise. My personal take, if you're recording in an uncontrolled environment like an untreated room that might have some echo, or maybe you live next to a noisy highway, a dynamic mic is a better option for you due to the better ambient sound cancellation. Now, on the other hand, if you're recording in a professional studio or a treated office like mine, so to speak, you'll probably benefit from the true to life sound of a condenser microphone. But at the end of the day, like always, this is really a personal preference. The most popular dynamic microphone is by far and away the Shure SM7B, which you'll probably recognize from basically every podcast ever, whereas a popular condenser option would be the Audio-Technica AT2020. Now, the second factor we have to consider with this type of microphone is the interface. You can get a mic that is as simple as a USB plug directly into your computer, allowing you to record via iMovie or any other simple app. A very popular, and you could probably say the most popular USB mic is the Blue Yeti, which is super simple and easy to use. Now, on the other hand, you can get a mic like the Shure SM7B, which yes, sounds amazing, but it requires you to get an interface like the Focusrite Scarlett, which converts your signal from XLR input to USB. On top of that, you can also get what's known as a cloud lifter to boost the signal and make these microphones even louder. This is kind of similar to what I've done with my Rode NTG3 in the fact that we need additional gear to make the setup work, but the trade-off for this lack of convenience, again, is that increase in quality, which for some people is worth it. And that does it for covering all of the general microphone types and the setups that you will commonly see modern content creators using in their videos. I want to end this video by quickly outlining a few common scenarios and which mics are best suited for each. This way you know exactly what to choose depending on what type of content creator you are. Before we do that though, if you're enjoying this content or find it valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and comment your thoughts beneath this video. To thank you for doing that, here's a quick clip of a very cute puppy. Now back to it, let's dive into a few of these scenarios. Let's say you're watching this video as a budding freelance videographer. You plan on shooting all different types of content like weddings, commercials, events, maybe music videos, real estate, and so on. For you, we could recommend a ton of different microphones, but if I was in your shoes and I could only have one microphone setup, I would go with a lav mic setup due to their versatility, their affordability, and their high all-around audio quality. I'd recommend you go with the dedicated recorder option. This way you can mic people up who are very far away from the camera and still get crystal clear audio. Or if you do have the budget, you can splurge for the wireless option like the DJI setup we mentioned earlier. This is great for commercial interviews with seated or moving subjects, miking up the groom on his wedding day so you can capture all the audio from the ceremony, and even filming YouTube content like what you're watching right now. Lav mics are perfect, and that's what I did for years when we were first getting started with this channel. Up next, let's say that you're an up-and-coming vlogger looking to keep their setup as minimal and easy to use as possible. For you, I do think an on-camera shotgun microphone like the Rode VideoMic Go is a great option, assuming that you're always going to be keeping the camera extremely close to wherever the sound is coming from. If you wanted to spend a little bit extra, you could also go with the Rode VideoMic Pro, which is going to give you a little more quality. This setup will also work extremely well for travel filmmakers or action sport content creators who are looking to capture the sounds as they go, and they can't just put like the lav mic on every single thing that they're recording. Just keep in mind, as always, that proximity is everything. If you want good audio, you need to be close to your subjects. Up next, let's talk about talking head YouTubers similar to the video that you're watching right now. Now, obviously you have a few different options here. If you plan on having just one primary setup, you don't really intend on moving that much, you're gonna be near your computer, and you also don't care if your microphone is in your actual scene, a podcast mic like the Shure SM7B or the Audio-Technica AT2020 or Blue Yeti will serve you very well. You'll need any interface that your mic requires, and I also recommend you get one of those trendy adjustable mic stands, allowing you to move your mic on the fly. On the other hand, if you're like me and don't really like having a mic in the frame all the time, I'd go with one of the advanced shotgun microphones like what we talked about earlier. The Rode NTG3 and the Sennheiser 416 are my two favorites. These are going to be a bit better at recording from a slight distance, allowing us to place them outside of the frame like I am right now. The audio quality is rock solid, and due to the setup I have with the H4n that I mentioned earlier, I can save that audio directly into the video as it records. I personally stuck with this setup not only because I don't like having the mic in the actual frame, but I also see it as better bang for my buck because I can use it in all of the other content that I shoot, like commercials, interviews, narrative scenes, course tutorials, and so on. You can also simply use a lav mic and just clip it onto your shirt, plug it into your camera, plug it into a recorded device, and that will simplify your entire setup and probably save you some good money as well. And that does it, my friends. I know we covered a lot, but hopefully after watching this beast of a video, you finally feel like you have a better understanding of all the technical mumbo jumbo that sometimes makes buying gear feel like you're navigating a cornfield maze. So the goal of this video was to provide clarity to you, not just on what microphone to buy, but how to analyze recording setups and make smart buying decisions now and in the future. If you want to learn the same process, but for camera gear, lights, computers, gimbals, and so on, we've built out the world's most affordable program that covers all things filmmaking. It's called 14-Day Filmmaker, and it contains over 100 different video trainings that outline every single aspect of the filmmaking process, giving you the ability to take whatever gear you have, even if it's just your smartphone, and shoot professional looking videos that will blow people away. And speaking of smartphones, we just added a completely new bonus program that is 100% focused on just smartphones, and you get access to that completely for free as a bonus as soon as you enroll. In the past 2 years, we've helped over 50,000 students just like you master content creation. The course is filled with valuable content and additional student bonuses like 60% off the entire Adobe Creative Cloud. So that's applications like Premiere Pro, After Effects, Lightroom, Photoshop, and so on, all 60% off. That alone will pay for the course in just 2 months, and you'll be editing on some of the best software in the world. I also host a weekly live Q&A call every single week that you get lifetime access to. We also have free downloads like sound effects, graphic templates, and tons more, and you get access to all of this for the rest of your life for the insanely low price of just $48. If that sounds interesting, you can enroll in like 30 seconds. The link is beneath this video. Other than that, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.